welcome to the Boardroom TV podcast. I'm your host, Ntalondle Ngcakaza, and today we're talking to some of the players in the fintech space in Kenya. I'm joined by Sam Njuguna, and he's one of the finalists for the Milken Mutsipe Prize. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me here. Thanks.
Yes. So you're one of the finalists in the Milken Mutsipe Prize. Tell me how did this come about? Your nomination, and maybe a bit of your background also in the space that you operate.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, my name is Sam Njuguna, as you have rightly put it. I'm based here in Nairobi, Kenya, and the innovation we have is a service called Chumz. Chumz is a street lingo in Kenya for money. And what the product does is that it allows people to save and invest by setting up goals. But the whole process of saving is guided by what we call behavioral psychology and a lot of gamification. So what do we mean by that? So for example, if you download our app and you create your own goals, the app will be guiding you on when to save based on how you spend your money. For example, if you spend your money in a pub, the app will say, hey, we see you having a lot of fun. Would you like to save some of the money for some of your goals? And if you say yes, it allocates the money. If you receive some of the mobile money into your mobile money account, the app will be very proactive. It will ask you, would you like to save the money? The other interesting thing we do is that you can also save money based on the results of your favorite football team. So if you're a big Arsenal fan, you can set a rule that whenever Arsenal wins a game, the app, you'll be saving X amount, and the app will be telling you when the Arsenal games, it will tell you the results, and based on the results, it will tell you to save the amount you had preset. So that's what we've been doing here in Kenya. We also recently expanded into Rwanda, and we have also been given authorization in Uganda and Tanzania, which we expect to be in those markets by the end of this quarter. So that's what we've been working on. And the other value addition, or the other value we are giving our users is that they can save the smallest amount they can transact on their mobile money. So what that means is it's very inclusive, basically driving financial in anyone and everyone, no matter how much money they have, they're able to start saving and investing. So that's what we have been building. And then we saw these article about the Mutsipe Prize, the Milken Mutsipe Prize, and we thought it aligns with what we are doing, especially focusing on fintechs and fintechs touching on SMEs. So we did apply for the prize, and we happened to be among the 10 final shortlists, of which after that we had a presentation that was based in Abu Dhabi, and then I emerged as among the 3 finalists for the final prize of the $1 million consideration.
All right, Sam. Give me some background also. Where did you start working in the fintech space? I'm sure you worked for some corporates, and you developed your skill along the way, and your management and your business etiquette. Tell me, where did the dream start for you in this space that you operate?
Yeah, so for me, interesting enough, I've never worked for any corporate. So I knew since university days on. Yes. I always say that's another way of saying I decided to be broke very early by starting startup. So what happened was when I was in college, I knew I wanted to try my own thing and try and see whether I can build a business utilizing the computer science background I had. So while other people are very passionate about the technical aspects on computer science, for me the interest has always been those technical skills and how they tie into business skills for you to create a solution, a product, and scale it to a company. So when I graduated from university or from college, the first thing I did, I was involved in my first company that was dealing with airtime distribution for corporates. So basically what would happen is, if you have a company that has 100 or 1,000 employees, you want to give them airtime either for communication or to top up their devices for data. You come to the platform, upload an Excel, and then it distributes the airtime. So that's what we started off with. And then I was then involved in another company dealing with what we call alternative credit scoring. Essentially, using alternative data like mobile money transactions, how you top up your utility, how you utilize your airtime to determine whether you're creditworthy or not. So that one, we did it in a number of African countries. We were in Kenya, Uganda, we did it in Ghana, Senegal, Haiti, Ethiopia. But then COVID happened. And all of a sudden, people are not paying loans. Companies were not very willing to take up new products, especially lending space. And additionally, we also had very expensive engineers on our payroll. So what happened after COVID is essentially the company wouldn't continue. So we ended up now trying to see what now would be our next step. But luckily, one of the few things I'd learned in the lending space is that because with alternative credit scoring, you analyze a lot of how people spend their money, whether it's savings, whether it's spending in betting, you do all manner of analysis. So it had been very clear that sometimes people hardly save. And for me, for the longest time, it's something I had also struggled with personally. Like, how do you build a savings culture? So out of my own interest or behavioral economics, which has always been a field of passion for me, I've been reading a lot about that. And out of that now, that's how Chumz came into being.
Yes, the savings culture, Sam, I mean, like, tell me more about that, because I know in South Africa, it's not, especially middle class, it's still not there yet. People still struggle with saving. Also, in this day and age with inflation and all those things, how do you encourage the culture of saving? How do you start and actually implement that in one's life? I mean, for instance, as an SME startup, you have many expenses to look after, and your payroll, whatever employees you might have or team that you might have. How do you encourage that culture and actually execute that kind of a goal to start saving?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So, and actually, what has happened in especially in sub-Saharan Africa, we have a saving rate of 8.5%, which is very low globally. The other thing that has happened is we have seen a lot of payday loan platforms that have cropped up, and what that means is people are being pushed or encouraged by these entities to go more towards the lending route as opposed to saving towards whatever they intend to save for or whatever they aim to acquire. So what this has happened is we find people have spiraled into debt. The other people who are doing what we call loan stacking, they're borrowing a loan from this company, getting another loan from another company, another third company for them to meet their needs. And then that spiral and it becomes a cycle. So for that, and that essentially drains the people. They are no longer productive. All they're doing is looking for money to repay the loans. So in a way, it leaves people being badly off. So going back to your question on, so how do you enhance this savings culture? So the thing about saving is that it's one of those things that you see the value in saving, but there's a gap between intention and action. I always give an example of it's very similar to going to the gym. You see the value of going to the gym, but there's a gap between the intention and the action. That gap is a habit gap. Same case with savings. The gap between the intention and the action is a habit gap. So the question is then, how do you enhance or how do you create a habit? And that's where now the behavioral psychology comes in. Because the whole aspect of it is, if people are already willing to do this thing, then how do you design a product that ties into their everyday lifestyle to guide them to achieve this particular action, which they are very keen on achieving? And that's where now the Chumz app comes in. So for example, one of the things we do is on Fridays at 8:20 p.m., we normally send a message saying, hey, we can't usually have very heavy spending. Would you like to save some money now? And the reason why we send it at 8:20 p.m. on a Friday night is because we know most people are out. They're having fun. So if you present the whole idea of them being conscious about their spending, what you find is most of them will put some money aside during that time. Because one, you're doing a bit of guilt tripping. They're already having a drink. And at the same time, you are reminding them, hey, don't drink all the money. But at the same time, they also see the value in what you're presenting. The fact that they know weekends, they generally spend more relative to any other day. And they would need to put money aside so that they don't spend all of it. So tuning the product to how they behave, now you see there's a reaction to it. Compare that to the traditional banking services, whereby a bank expects you to be highly motivated, you get money out of your pocket and you put it into their savings account. That journey in itself, by the time you remove money from the pocket to the account, you have a number of temptations. You'll have your friend who's asking you for the money. You'll have these, the option of spending that money on this interesting restaurant you're just in. You'll have temptation of, spending that money elsewhere. So the idea is then, how do you make this seamless and in a way that increases that motivation for someone to put money aside? And that's what we have done with the behavioral psychology aspect. Other things that traditionally we know have worked for us is that as Africans, we know that we save more when we come together as groups. And the reason is we have always been very social. And then with finance tying into the social aspect, it becomes a fun thing. So, and now you become answerable to your group members. So they'll ask you, hey, Sam, why haven't you contributed this money? Or why have you been left behind? And in a fun manner. So if you go to the behavioral psychology space, they call that social nudges. The fact that you're doing this as a group, you have nudges from the other members of the group. And again, what we have done on the app is we have created a group feature whereby if one member deposits money, it communicates to all the others that you have deposited and asks them whether they would also like to deposit. And that's how now you drive that saving behavior
because that's what I'm picking up, that you guys leverage, maybe you have a community, maybe social media, and you have young people engaged in what you are doing. So you keep that, like the app becomes a friend of sorts, and then there's that communication line and interaction with the app. Was that your strategy to make it more social and build a community around what you're doing?
Yeah, so there's the aspect of the community there's a community aspect to it to encourage each other to save. In fact, on the app, we have something we call a leaderboard, where you can see other people, how they are saving against where you are. But then again, you also have your personal goals. So as an individual, if you're not a member of that community, how can we also encourage you to save and invest? And ideally, how we go about that is we tie other behavioral aspects. For example, there's a challenge we call Mia Kwa Mia, which means save 100 shillings for 100 days. And that's a personal challenge. You take it up, every day it will be reminding you to put in 100 shillings, and it will do that for just 100 days. So that's it's not communal, but it's for you individually, it's personal. But then again, it has that gamification.
Also, what I would like to also speak about, Sam, the debt culture. I mean, we've seen with private equity, even overseas, the US, how they use debt to buy up businesses in the acquisition space. Is that something that is that could maybe, like your end goal, maybe to sell the business, and is that something you would look at, or do you see some of these? What is the feel in the fintech space in Kenya? Is it a growing space? You see a lot of new companies popping up and acquiring funding, or companies being sold?
Yeah, I think the space has been upbeat. We have seen a lot of growth. Again, I think by default we have seen Kenya ranking as for the last few years being among the top countries that have received a lot of funding. So the whole ecosystem is very vibrant. For us personally, or for me personally, what I'm looking at with what you're building is any engagement we have, it has to be aligned with our vision and our mission of making sure we build saving solutions for the masses, and especially for most people who are left out from the traditional way of investing. The money we put in our platform generally earns, it does earn interest. And what has happened in sub-Saharan Africa, people like fund managers, entities like fund managers are only found mostly in urban areas, which means most people in the rural areas don't get access to these channels where they can save and invest. But with our solution, what we have been very keen on is to avail this solution to anyone with a smartphone. They can download the app, register, and start saving and investing. Meaning we're able to provide investment solutions even to people who are not found in urban areas. So for us, to answer your question, if it's selling the company or getting a partnership, it would be more in the lines of people who are also aligned to our vision, and to see that it comes to fruition in empowering more people to save and invest from wherever they are.
Yeah. How would you measure your impact in the saving culture of the people that you guys serve? How would you measure your impact since your inception?
So I think the way we would measure that is in terms of the uptake. I think right now in Kenya we have been awarded twice the top savings and investment solution in Kenya. Which says a lot. If it says people are excited about the product. We have had a huge uptake by women on the platform. So we have right now our data is around I think close to 65% are women. They are the ones who are saving. The other bit that you have seen very interesting is also on the goals that you have seen people saving for. You have seen a lot of guys saving for school fees. We have a lot of first-time mothers who have saved for their maternity on the app. We've seen people save for their prosthetic legs on the app. And I think the other interesting statistic is, for example, last year we had over 30,000 goals that were met through our platform. So, and in terms of registered users now, we are headed to around 300,000. And we have been there in a span of around 2 years.
Wow. Congratulations, man. And also some of the challenges developing this app, and what are some of the challenges you've come across and also scaling this app?
I think the key challenge is, but it's an expected challenge, is that with any financial app, you need to be regulated. So what that means, in every market, you have to start with regulators first. You have to communicate to them. They need to understand what you're doing before you get the green light to set up in that market. The other bit is, with any financial product, trust is very key. So the key question has always been, in a new market, how do you sell trust? Or how do people trust your product? So that's something, and especially for a new entity, it's something you need to really learn and experiment and see what works. So in the case of regulation, I think that as long as you have the regulation, you are good there. For trust, it's a work in progress. You have to show you are regulated. You have to show the other people who are trustworthy, who are using your solution. You have to look for brand transfer and work with brands that are well known and trusted that you're working with. So for example, the money we collect, we normally channel it to a bank or a financial institution. So through that relationship, then we sell that element of trust. And then the other thing is, above and beyond that, you have the issue startup struggles of learning the market, scaling the product, having people who are very technically competent, which means you need to learn how to hire the right people. Yeah, all the way to fundraising, which is also a learning curve. And at the same time, you have to look for investors who are aligned to your vision and mission.
Yeah. Participating in this Milk and Mutsipe Prize, how has it influenced your business and in terms of your outlook now? I mean, I'm sure you're also thinking international now. International investors are watching what you're doing. How has this participating in this fintech Milk and Mutsipe competition influenced your business, would you say?
Yeah, so one of the things is it has given us also a launching pad for our expansion to the other markets. So, for example, the setup we are doing in Rwanda right now, we already have users in Rwanda. So that partially was facilitated by being in part of the Motsepe prize. There is a small grant they gave all the 10 finalists. The other bit that we are very keen on is if with the networks we are forming and the fundraising we are looking at, it will also give us a launch pad now to set up in the other markets we are looking at, which is Uganda, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. We have had several discussions with a number of entities that are looking to white label our solution in Botswana, South Sudan, and we're also very eager to look into West African countries. So by being in that platform, it gives us a window to get the necessary partnerships for us to scale to that bit. And not forgetting the $1 million prize, just in case.
Yes, that was my next question.
If luck is on our side, I think that's a fund that would really accelerate our expansion and also enhance our marketing in Kenya. We have grown largely by bootstrapping the company. Even those numbers we have acquired and a very strong word of mouth. But I believe now with the funds, we would be in a better position in terms of scaling, fine-tuning the product, getting more developers to enhance our solution, and faster expansion into the other markets where we already have a waiting list of clients.
Yeah. How do you see Chumz contributing to the broader goals of financial inclusion and economic empowerment in emerging markets?
Yeah. So one of the things we are very keen on is just communicating the idea that there are other alternatives other than debt. I think debt has plagued a lot of, people in our market. One of the things that was very surprising is that when we went out with foot soldiers to tell people about our app, and you were telling them, hey, if you put money here, it's going to earn interest. The first thing they would ask us is, why are you charging us interest? And I was like, no. This is interest you are earning.
Yeah.
By then I came to realize most people in our market are so used to lending apps, and there's limited financial literacy that whenever they see the term interest, they associate it with lending, whereby they pay back to the company. So the first thing is change people's view of how they can achieve their goals, which is they can save towards that. It's a slow process. It requires discipline, but then again, it has a better payoff than when you borrow money and you still need to pay an interest, and maybe you might be, when you're repaying, you might be under a lot of stress for you to do that. The other bit is the fact that we allow people to save the least amount of money they can transact on their mobile money. So what that means is we are all inclusive. People who traditionally wouldn't have a channel to save and invest, now they're able to invest through our platform. And then the other bit is on the behavioral aspect. So how we're enhancing financial inclusion. It's one thing to say you are enhancing savings and investment, but then again, how do you drive that in a way that people can be able to follow through on what they intend to do? So through behavioral aspects and behavioral psychology and gamification, we're able to enhance that savings culture.
Yeah. Tell me about the company culture, Sam. How have you implemented that, and what is the culture? Because in most cases, that also transfers to how your brand speaks to the masses, and that that relationship that people will have with your brand, especially a fintech company, dealing with money. So that company culture, what is it, and how have you developed it?
So our culture is one of being creative. I believe creativity is what speaks to the public. Your product might have the best tech, but even with that, even with being creative on the tech angle, you also need to be creative on the way you're presenting the product. So one of the things, for example, we're very cognizant of is to move away from the traditional way savings products are designed, whereby they are presented as very serious products. A bank is blue in color, everything is blue. Another one is green in color, the app is just green. So as we decided to do the converse, and we decided the app needs to be very vibrant. So if you download our app or if you go to our website, you'll see it's full of colors. We have pink, you'll see a bit of purple, you'll see orange, you'll see it's very, very colorful. And the idea was savings can be fun. So that's something we have done internally, and even the way we onboard and we hire, we are very big on creative people, or people who think outside the box, people who are willing to try out new ideas, fail, and try other ideas. And I would say, for example, just to indicate on how that has also informed the company, I think one of our biggest, fastest growing departments has been the design side. Because even these elements of behavioral psychology, for you to guide people on how to save and invest, they need a lot of creative people to guide on that. You have to think through, how do you create a behavioral mechanism that is unique, truly unique, but at the same time, it drives the intended action of people to save and invest.
Awesome. And the role you see fintech innovations like Chumz playing in addressing global financial challenges?
Yeah, so I think so every country wants its people to save. It's best when a country depends on its people saving. But at the same time, everyone needs to save, so that we say save today so that you can save yourself tomorrow. So in essence, what that means is when you save, essentially what happens is it informs the well-being, not just for the nation, but it starts with you personally. When you no longer have to rely heavily on debt, it means either psychologically you are better off, and also financially you are better off. And globally, any country that has a very good saving rate is usually in a better position than one where people have a very low savings rate. So where we sit as Chumz is that the whole agenda of savings and investment and financial inclusion, that's what we are very keen on driving. And we drive that by building very conscious and interesting saving habits through behavioral psychology and gamification.
Yes. And the regulatory environment in East Africa in terms of the fintech space, how much support you're receiving maybe from government? Are the policies also encouraging for business and also for international investors coming in? Because I know in some ways in South Africa is a lot of red tape sometimes for this kind of businesses, especially startups. So how is the regulatory environment in Kenya?
So in Kenya, I would say it's been rather interesting. It's been very supportive in the sense that Kenya introduced what they call a fintech sandbox. And the whole role of fintech sandbox is to support new innovation that the regulators don't understand, but at the same time they think will have an interesting impact in the market. So in our case, we were the first one to be graduated as a company that is dealing with investments, but utilizing technology to mobilize investment of the funds to the retail users. So what that meant was we were doing what the regulator calls market deepening. Essentially, we were reaching out to a new segment of the market that previously was not saving and investing. But then we were doing it in a very different way, which is using technology. And the regulator was cognizant. They didn't have regulation for that kind of an approach. So what they said is, I would like to welcome you to our sandbox. We see how your solution works. We allow you to test with a limited number of users. We see how it works. But at the same time, once we learn how it works, then we'll create a license category for your kind of innovation. And that's what happened. And now we operate under the license, which now we have been, that was generated from us being in the sandbox.
Yes.
Yeah, so the short of it, we have seen it. The environment is changing, and every regulator is being cognizant that technology moves faster than regulation. And the only way to understand that and accommodate that is by giving people like us a space where to test the solution, people to understand it, and from there now regulate it.
Yes, and what's the next level for Chumz? Is there any other particular spaces you are interested in? Maybe you might transition into as the business is growing?
So our key focus right now is just to focus on savings and investment. We need people to save and save and save and save and invest and invest and invest. Yeah. And looking for ways to enhance that through behavioral psychology and gamification. So that's our core focus for now. And the idea is we are going to do that by end of this year. We'll be in at least 6 markets. And then that is in the East Africa and South Africa and Southern Africa. And then we're also looking to West Africa eventually. So for now, it's just scaling the savings and investment approach. That's our language for now, and that's our focus. Eventually, after we do that very well, then that's when we can consider looking at other value adds for our users or our clients.
Yes. And is that you keep the same approach to the different markets? I mean, like when you go maybe to Rwanda or you speak of Botswana, you keep the same approach in terms of the business that you guys do, or is there any adjustments that you make according to the different territories that you are doing business in?
So there's also a factor of differentiation and a bit of product development depending on the market. But at the core foundation is to focus on the savings and investment. However, in different markets, there are a number of customizations you might need to do depending on what channels of savings people use there or of transaction. You need to layer that. There might be other things, for example, investment products that are differentiated in one market relative to another market. So you also need to be cognizant of that. And the other thing is the partners you are working with. So, for example, in Rwanda, we are working with the Bank of Kigali Capital Investments arm. In Kenya, we are working with one of the big fund managers around. So also the different offering by the different partners, you customize and accommodate for that as well.
Yes. What have you learned, man, before we close, what have you learned in this time of starting this kind of business? What is one key business lesson that maybe you can transfer to some of the SMEs and startups out there?
Yeah, so I think one of the key lessons is it's the appetite of how fast you learn. And how fast you learn is a factor of the people you surround yourself with and what books you consume, and also how many mistakes you're willing to take and learn along the way. So I've seen that's very key. I remember Facebook had a phrase where they said, move fast and break things. And I think actually the ethos behind that is how fast are you learning? And that informs a lot. So you can always take a step back and try to overanalyze some things, but you'll never get the full answers or the full information on how a situation is unless you try it out. So my focus and what I double down on is on how fast we can learn. Whether I learn that from other people who have been in that space and, they act as mentors, whether it's through the people I'm relating with, books I can get about the space, or even a documentary or an online lesson. So double down on learning. And it's the same case with any startup you're building, whereby what you do is learn your customers first, see what they prefer, and position the product in the angle that they would prefer to have it in. So learning and doubling down on learning.
Yes, man. Thank you so much, Sam. Wishing you all the best, man, in your endeavors. And yeah, congratulations. I hope you win the milk can.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks.
milkenmotsepeprize.org